You are listening to the Will Power Podcast. Welcome to the show. I am Will Holdren, and I talk with some of the most influential CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, and thought leaders to reveal the secrets that have led to their success. I believe that with the right knowledge and mindset, you can do anything you say your mind to. So if you want to learn how to change your life for the better, if you want to learn how millionaires actually became wealthy, or if you want to develop and start your own business from the ground up with the right knowledge to help you, then you are in the right place because this is the Willpower Podcast. How's it going, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I am the host of the Willpower Podcast. Today we have an amazing individual, an amazing entrepreneur based out of the Utah marketplace, and his name is Jeff Mann. And Jeffrey is actually a PR specialist for many influencers that are out there. On top of it, he's also the PR director for a very famous influencer called Kris Krohn. So, Jeffrey, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for making time. I'm excited to jam with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love connecting with entrepreneurs and seeing what they're up to, seeing how they grew their business, how they got started. So I'm excited to start diving into your story. So I guess starting out, let me ask you a question I pretty much ask all of my guests, which is one,
Okay.
What was your childhood like and how did you end up getting into entrepreneurship?
So my childhood's a little bit crazy, a little different than most. So I was born in Maryland. I was adopted to Idaho when I was 3 weeks old. I have moved over to Africa 3 times. When I was 7 and 8, I moved to Zimbabwe, moved back to Idaho. When I was 14, 15, and 16, I moved to South Africa and then moved back to Idaho. I graduated high school in Idaho and then moved down to Utah, went to a semester of college, and then went on a Christian mission back to Ghana, West Africa. And so moved there for 2 years. And then I've been in Utah ever since, since 2014.
Wow.
I've been here in Utah. So I actually went to school in public relations, minored in marketing. And so right out of school, I started with a PR agency. And then when the pandemic hit, we started working from home. And I said to myself, why I can be doing this on my own. Why am I, working for a firm, making less money? So kind of just branched out on my own. Started to do that. I was working with brands and companies. And then about a year and a half ago, Kris Krohn, who's big in the real estate space, was looking for someone in PR. And his team just reached out to me. We connected over LinkedIn. I went and did an interview with them and we just connected, and it's been a beautiful synergy. And that kind of has opened my door and transitioned me from working with brands to then working with people and growing their name, growing their brand, taking their message to the world. And so that's kind of the world I live in today. It's kind of what I'm up to.
Awesome. I love that background. It's definitely a very unique childhood of how you got to where you are today. And, it's definitely not easy living in Africa, living in Idaho. I mean, those are two very, very different places, right? So
yeah,
definitely had to be difficult, growing up in those kinds of situations. And
no,
also,
for sure.
I love the Christian ministry as well. I know you mentioned you went to Ghana and kind of saw some things over there. So I think everyone should do a mission trip at least once in their life just to see what that is really like, to see how
Exactly.
blessed we really are, because I think people over here really just take it for granted how much stuff we have,
Oh,
all the
you're
luck
telling me.
we have. Yeah.
I mean, like running water, electricity, and we're so focused on the material things. Like we need the newest iPhone. We need, if our house isn't cold enough, but it's like, guys, we have AC. There's places that don't have any AC.
Right.
I remember I had a week where my water heater went out, and for me, I was freaking out because I'm like, I don't want cold showers. But then I thought back when I was living in Ghana, I had a cold shower every morning.
Right.
And so it's interesting to see, here in America and in first world countries, just exactly, I guess, how privileged we are and what we take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so on that note, walk me through, I know it was a while ago when you did the mission trip, but obviously something like that, you definitely remember and take with you forever, right? So walk me back through that mission trip. What are some of the biggest key takeaways you had coming back from Ghana in that mission trip?
Um, so kind of crazy for me was I was in a different spot because here I am, an African American going to Africa. So I may look like the people, but I don't speak the language. I don't understand the culture. I don't have a lot of similarities to the people there. And so that was a huge adjustment because to the people, I looked like them, but I spoke different. The things I wanted to do were different. So that was a big shift for me. I think the other one for me was just understanding, hey, here's a person who may have tattered clothes, may live in a shack, but they're just as good as the person as I am. And it goes back to that belief of no matter how much I may have versus how much they may have, when we both die, none of it's going with us.
Right.
And so, what exactly is our purpose here on earth? What exactly are we doing? And so that was the other adjustment. I remember when I came back from that trip, some buddies and I went to a buffet, and we broke down because just seeing the amount of food that people waste and the way people eat food after being over there, where you're not having a lot of food. I mean, there were families who had nothing, but yet when you would come and visit them, they would feed you and give you everything that they have.
Yeah. No, you're definitely spot on. It really is a reality check, right? Like you said, I think Americans, most of us anyway, are so materialistic. We're just missing the whole big picture of what we're really trying to do here on earth and what we're trying to do to make lives better for other people, and just the general concept of putting others before yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It just gets lost in shuffle because everyone's just work, 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 go, go, go every single day. And that's what the result is, So I
no,
think that's
exactly.
an experience, no doubt. So another thing that's pretty unique about you, obviously, you went into PR, you majored in PR, and you're actually the first entrepreneur I've had on here who has his own business based around PR, which is pretty cool. So I wanted to know what drew you to that industry to begin with, and what did you love about it?
It's kind of funny. So people who know me and meet me, they realize when I talk to people, I never shut up. I'm always talking. I'm always creating conversations, meeting people, connecting people. And so when I stepped into this field, I'm like, hey, everything works together. Like what I love to do, what I do every day, I can make a career out of it. And so when I started doing that and taking classes and, talking to people who was in that space, I was like, hey, I could really excel at this. And so I started jumping into it, started meeting other people, started networking, attending masterminds, going to events, listening to people on stages, speaking on podcasts myself. And everything just synced up. And I was like, I have this amazing network of people that I've met. Why don't I take those connections and help empower other people? And so that's when it started to spread. And I started to work with one influencer, and they're like, hey, I could connect you with this influencer. And it just became this big circle of constant connections and introducing people. And, with that also has been the balance of I've made some really bad introductions. People I thought, hey, this would be a great person for you to meet or to talk to or connect with. But hey, it's not, it didn't work out. On the other hand, I've made some amazing connections where they've been able to do business. They've been able to, I guess, create some JVs together. And so that's the fun side for me is when I make that introduction, that connections for someone I've met and they've been able to lead towards business, it just makes it amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got started.
That's awesome. To your point, if you can connect people with other people, that's how you bring a lot of value in this world. And you can make a lot of money just off of relationships, building relationships and being really good at building relationships and knowing what to do with those relationships. That's really the key foundation, key block to no matter what business you're going to do, right? So it's definitely
Yeah.
a good skill set to learn. So how do you think you became so experienced and so good at building up these relationships and connecting people? Is there anything you learned along the way, or is that just something you were born with?
So the first thing I would say is it's just taking time and learning and crafting on how to do an introduction or why am I connecting certain people. But the biggest lesson I learned that I think changed my life and my career was when you look to give more than you look to take, there's a different energy that you have. A lot of people, when you get started being an entrepreneur or going into business or meeting people, you want to be transactional. Your first thing on your mind is, how can we make money? What can we do? But when you go into a room and you say, I just want to add value, I just want to serve the people here, there's a whole different way the relationship gets formed. And for me, I found that that leads to better business down the line than me going into something and I'm just looking at business.
Right. Right. Yeah, you got to have a good heart, and people can definitely tell when you're going into the relationship wanting something out of it immediately.
Uh-huh.
It's just definitely a red flag. People turn away saying, nope, not going to
Yeah.
with this person, not going to really connect with this person. And to your point,
No, for sure.
you want to be in a position where you can have those connections, even
Uh-huh.
without an agenda on the first day, but like 5 years down the road, who knows what happens? And then
Exactly.
you had that relationship build, you glad you have that person in your database, right? So you got to be
Yeah.
planting those seeds now, like all entrepreneurs do, for a couple of years down the road. And really, when you can start to see the results of them, it's something that ever pops
No,
up.
for sure. And I always tell people, the biggest thing I can always tell people, when you want to become an entrepreneur, when you still want to start making relationships, stay away from being transactional, because people also start to talk. And that's the thing about the influencer space, is a lot of people know each other. And so when you tend to be transactional and people know that's all you're about, that spreads amongst people, and people aren't as open to you to have conversations, to invite you to things, to invite you into their home. And so for me, it's about creating genuine relationships. But one of the things I do when I go to events or masterminds, you'll meet an influencer who has an assistant. And everyone who goes want to connect with that influencer, but 90% of the people never ask the influencer's assistant, how are you? How's your family? And so I look at the influencers, who is the people around them that help make them successful? And I want to honor and give time to them as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. That's actually a topic I want to jump into. I think a lot of people, they get told, go to masterminds, meet all these people, expand your network. But really, what do you do when you're at the mastermind, right? How do you actually
Yes.
create those connections, and what's the proper funnel to leverage those connections to actually grow those relationships over time post the mastermind experience, right? So walk me through like what's your kind of take on that, and how should people be approaching masterminds, and what do they do when they're at the mastermind?
So it's kind of crazy for me, is I've been out to funnels hacking in Orlando with Russell Brunson. I've been to what is it, Founders Board with Roland Frazier in Austin, Texas. And at both of those things, I never entered the room. I was in the hallway talking to people, connecting, introducing myself. And one of the hacks that I did is I would go with some buddies and we would make a reservation one of the nights for like 14 people. And throughout the day, as we were meeting people, I was like, you know what? I want to talk more to this guy. Or, hey, my buddy could talk to this girl. And so we would invite people to come with us to dinner. We'd add them to a group chat. And then throughout the day, as we were connecting, meeting people, once the table was full, that night we would sit down and we would connect. And that's where the best business was done. That's where the best relationships were formed. And so for me, I go into it and I just want to talk to people. I want to get open value at rooms, at the tables that I sit in. And sometimes you don't even talk about what you do for work. Don't even talk about what you do for business. You're just making conversation. Now, if someone asks me, then I'll be like, oh yeah, I do PR. I work with influencers. I'll tell them. But it's never my go-to. My go-to is always, here's what I stand for. Here's what I value. Here's what I believe in.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's all very valid points. I love the whole restaurant thing too, and breaking bread, because that's where people's walls kind of come down. If you can break bread with
Yes.
someone and have a meal with someone, that's where you can really start to expand that relationship to a whole nother level. And I love everything you're saying too about how on the first day you meet them, you don't want to ask them for something. You're not trying to propose to a girl on the first date. So it's the same concept.
Exactly.
You're trying to go and have a mindset of like, hey, I want to connect with you, just get their phone number, have a nice, genuine, easygoing conversation to begin with. And honestly, post convention, then reach back out to them, say, hey, I'd love to hop on a Zoom to see how we can help one another moving forward, right? To help each other with goals. And that's really how you can go. And then on that next couple of meetings, then you can really see what they're doing, what they're up to, and how you can help them. Again, it's providing value to them. And in response to that Zoom call, what do you think they're going to say back to you is, how can I help you? Right. So that's really going to be an angle for you to kind of leverage that connection over some time. So I think those are all really great points.
No, thank you.
I want to jump back into your story. So you mentioned that during COVID, it kind of pushed you out of what you're doing 9 to 5 and kind of pushed you more into entrepreneurship world. So I'm curious, do you think if COVID never happened, you would still be working at that job?
You know, honestly, I would say there's a high possibility, yes, because I would have been in a space, I would be with my coworkers every day rather than at home working by myself. And I think I would have created better relationships where I felt like I needed to honor them and stay there and grind with them. A few of the people that I worked with actually have been laid off since. And so the company would have shifted, and all of them are in different PR roles, different places. I've even done some work, some freelance work with some of them since then. And so to me, I think that's a hard question, because I want to say yes, but to be an entrepreneur, you really can't stay in one place. You're constantly moving, adapting, growing, meeting new people. And so for me, I look at the pandemic as it was the biggest blessing in my life, because it completely shifted my career and my path.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely some disadvantages that obviously happen with that, but obviously in any situation you can find a positive, right, or an advantage.
Yeah,
And so I
no,
think
for sure.
definitely that was something that pushed your career way forward, right? And now looking back, you're like, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So you mentioned that you got your job, you got your position with Kris Krohn working for him. And I'm just curious, how do you think you landed that job? Why do you think he decided to go with you? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you were new in the entrepreneurship world of doing PR for influencers, right? So why do you think he decided to go with you? And what makes you different than all the other people that are doing PR out there?
They had interviewed like 20 different people, some different PR firms. The big thing that separated me is my flexibility. So I'm not married. I don't have kids. So if Kris was like, "Hey, we need to jump on a private jet and go somewhere tomorrow," I could drop everything and go. But also it was just such a synergy with his whole team. And I'll give you an example. His head of operations, her husband is big into bodybuilding. And so the husband had recognized me from the gym. And so that was my first connection. His head of HR, her kids went to the high school where I coached high school football. That was the next connection. I think the last one was his neighbor and his best friend, who's also his executive director. His nephew moved to the state of Utah during the pandemic to play football because it was shut down in Oregon, where he's from. And it just so happened to be the school where I was coaching football.
Oh, wow.
And so you had all of these different connections. It's like, okay, the universe is speaking. There's no way that you can't have 1, 2, 3 different people that knew me, knew my character, knew what I stand for. And so all those fell into place. And then just, I think I went in prepared. I had a plan for what I wanted to do. I reached out to a few of Kris's buddies that I knew. I said, "Hey, could you text him? I'm going in for an interview. I'd love you to give me a good word." They did that. And then I think the last thing is, on the 4th day of me working for Kris, I was able to do a podcast and some business from that brought in $100,000. And
Wow.
so, and that almost never happens in PR, and you're never going to ROI something that quick. But I think because that happened, it was like, wow, this guy is working. He knows his stuff. He's a hard worker. And my thing is, I shifted my whole routine. Kris starts his mornings at 4 a.m. So I get up at 4 a.m. because I know this is when he may start texting me. And so I adapted myself to work with him and to serve him. But I think through studying and through just grinding, I was able to make it work. And it's been a constant battle of, how do I get better each day? How can I improve? How can I grow? And I think just growing with him and that mentorship has also helped me to be able to serve him better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the fact you brought in something that led to $100,000 in revenue too, I mean, that's phenomenal. Do you mind touching on that a little bit more, like what that situation was and how that happened?
So we happened to do a podcast virtually out of Miami, and Kris talked about, "Hey, if you want to partner with me in real estate, here's what it looks like. Here's what I've done in real estate. Here's my resume." And in the first 2 hours of the podcast, we had 900 leads come through to our team of people that were interested. And so through that 900 leads, we were able to generate 100,000 in revenue, which to me was amazing. And while it was huge, I told myself, well, this also sets me up for failure, because how do you top that?
Right.
Because
That might be the
usually that
peak. Yeah.
never happens. Exactly. And so for me, it's been constantly, okay, how can I find a win? And just constantly finding wins and everything. And so whenever I travel, whenever I go to a mastermind, whenever I do something, I personally look at, what is the ROI behind the money I'm spending?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's fantastic. And I'm sure Kris is like, yep, I brought definitely the right guy onto the team, because that's like you said, it does not happen that often.
Exactly.
That's super cool.
Exactly.
So I'm kind of curious, like, what is your life entail doing like PR for these influencers? Are you primarily out there trying to get them on podcasts, stuff like that, and just getting the name out there, or what does your day consist of?
So you have the normal side, which to me is boring. Writing articles, press releases. You have that traditional media side, news, radio. The big thing now that they have is the virtual stage, podcasts, events, people speaking at things. And so for me, it's been really looking at, how is society shifting? How is society moving? And so I've had to adapt with them. I go out. One of the things I do is I'll go out to events and places and kind of vet it or see it or look at it. Is this a good fit for the influencer? Is it not? And if it's a good fit, then I'll be like, okay, let's go out there. Let's go speak there. Let's go be on that stage. And so for me, it's a lot of vetting. It's almost like being a gatekeeper. Because one of the things, and you probably know this better than anybody, to an influencer, to anybody that's high level, their most valuable asset is their time.
Yeah.
And so I want to honor their time and make sure it's not wasted. And so it's learning how to hack systems. One of the examples I'll give you is I took Kris to Las Vegas. There was a group out there that wanted him to do a podcast. Well, so I scheduled 5 podcasts, a lunch meeting, a dinner meeting. We flew in, we did the podcast, we did our meetings, we flew out that same night. And so it's really taking advantage of the time. And for me, I'm the type of person, I hate just downtime or sitting. I'm like, let's work. Let's stack work on top of work. And so Kris is a fun individual where he wants to work hard, but also play hard. And so we went out to Beverly Hills. We spoke at Ryan Pineda's WealthCon, and we went and did a dinner meeting. And afterwards, in my head, I'm like, okay, before we fly home, let's go do some more businesses. Are there more podcasts? What can we do in California? And Kris had brought some guests. His daughter, she brought a friend. And so he's like, you know what? Let's go to Universal Studios. So literally, I had an hour to find 9 tickets. We went there, hit 4 rides, make it back to the plane, and then fly home so he could sleep in his own bed.
Jeez.
And so, for me, I'm looking at how do I do business, but also create an experience for everybody. And so it's work hard, play hard. And so that's the thing is I've also had to learn is these influencers, they love to work, they love to create value and impact, but they also love to have fun. And it's finding that balance of, hey, sometimes don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah. You got to have joy in that process, but
yeah,
it's definitely a fast-paced lifestyle where you got to be on your toes all the time and things are constantly changing 24/7.
Oh, it's crazy because the thing people don't realize about a private jet is the pilots have a rest window. And so if you don't make that window, you're staying overnight in whatever city you're at so the pilots can rest. And so you're constantly like, I've had to pull Kris off stage and be like, do you want to sleep in Dallas or you want to sleep in your own bed? And literally get to the airport so we can take off. And so it's a balancing act of understanding where in the PR realm, you have to tell these influencers, hey, maybe don't say that. Or you got to be able to, coordinate things where, hey, this interview's ending right now, or hey, I'm pulling you off stage. And so it's an interesting field to be in because in some ways you also have to be the bad guy because you're protecting their time and you're protecting their image.
Yeah, no doubt. And so even for your business, I think time is definitely a very important thing. So how do you see yourself expanding and getting more influencers when, again, your time is limited, you're trying to do all this stuff for Kris, you're trying to do all this stuff for other influencers you're working for. How do you see yourself growing that brand, growing that PR business over time? Or are you just saying, I'm only working with these people and that's it?
So what I've found is there's a lot of really good PR people out there. And so what I'll do is, like, I know a lady who's in PR who is really good at getting events and coordinating that. And so what I can do is if I know an influencer wants to find an event or do an event, I'll connect them to her. And it's the same thing with other things that people need. And so you create this network of other PR specialists, other PR directors, and you're able to work together to give all these influencers everything they need. And that's one of the things that's helped me is because I only have so much time every week. And whether I want to sleep or have time for myself, I've had to learn that, hey, you can lean on other people. One of the things that we see in life is when you're a kid, your parents tell you no. That's all you ever hear is no, 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 no. When you become an adult and you leave the house and you're on your own, you start to say yes to everything. And yes to doing this, yes to doing that. And so the big thing for me has been after that period of being a yes man, you learn it's okay to say no, it's okay to say yes. And so it's balancing what are the things that I say yes to and what are the things that I say no to. And if people can't honor that or respect that, those are not the people that I want in my life or to do business with.
Right. It's so important, like you said, to be your own guardian of your own time because things
yes.
I love back to back to back. Before you know it, you don't have any time to yourself and have any downtime, which everyone needs. You got to be able to kind of look back, take a break for a second, and then jump back into things. So
Exactly.
I think that's very important. Before we run out of time here, just got a couple more questions for you. So guys, going forward for you, what are some of the big goals that you hope to get accomplished here in the next year or years going forward?
I think the next year, this is kind of crazy, is my goal is to speak on a stage and be able to share, hey, here's how I've helped these influencers, and here's my strategy. Here's how I've added value to the world. And so that's one of my personal goals. I think my other one is, personally, is I would love to be able to, with Kris, do $1 million in revenue from business that I've brought to his company or companies. One of the things that's kind of crazy is Kris's goal is to have 10,000 companies before he dies. And so with that being said, right now, when he brings all these new companies, I'm the only PR person for all of them.
Wow.
And so it's which also makes my job easier because I tend to be able to meet someone and find a company where they'll work with. When you have one entity that you have and one product, it's hard to find synergies. But when you have so many, it's like, okay, wait, maybe you'll do good over here, or maybe let's have you talk to this CEO. And so that's kind of my goal in the realm of business with Kris. I think on the personal level is just to have the best health possible and to be able to connect better. And what I mean by that is I want to be able to connect with myself better, whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whether it's working out. I want to be able to connect better with God and have a relationship with him, and then a connection with loved ones, family, and friends.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that should be a goal for everyone moving forward. And I also love all your business goals as well. I think they're fantastic goals, and I think you're definitely on pace to hit all of them. So that's gonna be super cool to see in the next couple of years here. Before we hop off, is there anything else that you'd like to say? And if people want to reach out to you, how can they go about finding you?
Yeah, if people just want to hit up my Instagram, Jeffrey Mann _. If you're interested in going to a networking event or a mastermind and you want some details, feel free to shoot me a DM. I think the other thing is people need to understand that narrative, when you speak and you want to create impressions with people, narrative and stories matter. And I'll give you an example. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay. Now ask me my favorite color.
What's your favorite color?
So one of the things that I saw traveling to places like Florida, to Africa, and you see the different color of trees and the different plants and nature, it's made me fall in love with the color green. And when I see green, it reminds me of the experiences that I've had, and that's why it's become my favorite color. Now, for your viewers and listeners, if they are going to remember one of our colors, they usually will tend to remember mine. Why? Because there was a story behind it, and there's a narrative created. There's emotions behind it. So in everything that we do and everything that we say, people may not remember what we did or what we said, but they will always remember how we made them feel. And so when you put a story or a narrative behind everything that you share or say or you want to impress on people, that will leave it in their hearts and their souls, and they're not likely to forget it. And so that's one of the big things that I think people can take away and they can learn is, how do you truly want to reach a person? Is it just for a day, or do you want them to remember you forever?
Yeah. No, you're right. And that is definitely an art and a skill that anyone can learn, but it's definitely a very important skill that not a lot of people take the time to learn. So that's a really good point. But all right, guys, there you have it. Jeffrey Mann, thank you so much for joining me today. And guys, reach out to him on Instagram because he's a very good person to connect you with. So there you guys have it. Jeff Mann, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, brother.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Willpower Podcast. If that's the case, help us spread the message of positivity and simply wanting a better life by giving us a 5-star review. Until next time, have a great week.